In 2002, a popular rock star would begin his aspiring filmmaking career. And with doing so, he would begin a process of over 20 years now of pissing people off. But not me. That first movie he made has become a cult classic for good reason. And it is a yearly October watch for me. So today, let's talk about House of a Thousand Corpses. Hey, what is up, everybody? Nick from the Lost River Drive-In here, and tonight I wanted to talk to you guys about Rob Zombie's first movie he ever made, and that is House of 1,000 Corpses. This is a movie that many people revere now, but it had a long history behind it, a troubled production history, and it did not get the best reception at the beginning. Very happy to see where this movie sits now with a lot of horror fans, but I kind of wanted to talk about this movie this October because I'm doing this thing on my channel, as you guys know. It's called Halloween at the Drive-In, where I'm probably going to be covering movies throughout the years that I watch every October. And I felt like, what better way to start that off than with this one? I want to dedicate an entire video to it, because I feel like this movie and this director deserve it. I've definitely talked about some of his other movies in separate videos, so it's not new for me to want to flesh out a Rob Zombie movie and defend it. But this one in particular, I feel like just gets swept under the rug when it comes to Rob Zombie, and I genuinely do not understand why. Let me take you on a trip down memory lane. See, when Nick was a young kid, I was about 12 years old, my mom was dating this guy named Greg. Greg was an asshole. Greg hated me and my siblings and wanted my mom to get rid of all of us. If he could drop us off at an animal shelter, he would have. But there was one upside to my mom dating Greg. See, one night, we all stayed the night over at his house, and him and my mom were back in his room all night wrestling, I guess. I don't know. But my brothers and I, while we were alone in the family room all night, well, we went to his movie shelf and we saw a movie there called The Devil's Rejects. And we thought, oh, I've heard about this one. This one just came out. Isn't this that Rob Zombie guy? And we watched it. And my mom was really busy trying to win her wrestling match, so she didn't know that we were watching it. She found out the next day, and she was pretty upset that we watched it. But thanks, Greg, for having that movie. That movie kind of led me on a journey to discovering Rob Zombie. So this was right before Halloween was announced, right before he was announced as the director, like months before. And I remember once that was announced, having just seen The Devil's Rejects, I was like, oh, hell yeah, because, younger me loved The Devil's Rejects. I didn't know there was a movie before that. I had no idea. And I feel like a lot of people were that way because The Devil's Rejects was pretty popular with critics and did pretty well for its budget. So, that was the movie that really put Rob Zombie on the map. But he made a movie before that. He made a movie that was like an acid trip, a fever dream, a rock music video. And that movie was House of a Thousand Corpses. Now, why am I holding up this edition aside from, the other ones that I own? Well, because this edition is killer, okay? This is the first edition I ever got. I love the old school look to it. And it's one of those, like media book almost looking things that kind of opens up like that. It had a bunch of pictures from the movie and stuff like that in here. And when I was a teenager, I actually took all of them out and I put them all up over my bedroom wall. And throughout the years, moving between houses, they didn't survive. So that sucks, but House of a Thousand Corpses. Now, here we are. I have discovered this movie. I have sought it out. I believe I actually got it at Blockbuster. We rented it and went home and I watched it by myself. I didn't watch it with my family. So my mom would do little cool things every now and then. And she would be like, you know what? You pick one. You watch it. Whatever, dude. Like, you do your thing. I don't think she had any idea what this movie was about. She had no clue. I just picked it. I said, this is the one I want. Let me tell you something. 12, 13-year-old Nick in his bedroom watching this late at night, my world was rocked. And why is that? See, first of all, it should be said that this movie had a really troubled production. Universal essentially gave Rob Zombie carte blanche almost to make his own movie. And I think they thought they knew what they were getting. Well, then when they saw the final product, they said, this is not what we paid for, and we gave you more money than we were initially going to. We cannot release this travesty. So it sat on the shelf for years. I think about 2 or 3 years before Lionsgate finally said, hey, we'll put it out. And guess what? For its budget, it made a good amount of money and it kind of put Rob Zombie on the map. It's funny nowadays because every year Universal does their like House of a Thousand Corpses house attraction on one of their backlots like every year. And it's like, yeah, we did this movie. And it's like, we don't forget that 20 years ago you thought this movie was a travesty to filmmaking and wouldn't release it. We have Lionsgate to thank, not Universal. But that's beside the point. House of a Thousand Corpses caught my eye and I think has really grown over the years in popularity because of its style, really. When you look at it at face value, the story is definitely at times disjointed. We can call a spade a spade. See, House of a Thousand Corpses' story is basically a group of early adults are traveling across the country writing this weird book about weird roadside attractions and they come across Captain Spaulding's chicken gas station, whatever the hell. And that leads them to wanting to find out where this hanging tree for Dr. Satan was. And they want to know more about Dr. Satan. And in doing that, they are essentially led to the Firefly family, who torture and eat people. It's basically like a modern day Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And that's really the whole plot of the movie. You have this side plot of this mythical Dr. Satan. Is it real? Is it not? If so, what is it? Where is it? And that's really interesting because you never actually get true answers on that. It's kind of whack. And then when you do get to see Dr. Satan near the end and his lair, you're just like, this doesn't make any sense. But yes, I love this movie. So this movie's not really known for its story. I think there's a few things that stand out about House of a Thousand Corpses. One is the star-studded cast. I mean, you've got Bill Moseley in here, who's a horror icon. You've got Sid Haig, who's a horror icon in here. I said what I said. He's still an icon in my mind. You've got Rainn Wilson. You've got Chris Hardwick. You've got a lot of people in this movie that have gone on to have pretty damn good careers. And this was early in a lot of their careers. So when you go back and watch this movie, you're like, wow, they're all in this movie? But I think the thing about House of a Thousand Corpses that makes this movie stand out so much is its vibe. I mean, really, it is just that. Rob Zombie obviously came from the metal scene. He came from being a hard rocker. He had directed some of his own music videos. He'd seen dozens of them directed himself. That was his world. These choppy, fast-paced, colorful, loud, weird camera angles and lenses, you name it. That was Rob Zombie's world. So he brought that to life for a 90-minute film. And it's wild when you watch this movie because at times you're like, what is this weird transition? What is this weird spinning shot? What is this weird angle? Why are we jumping from shot to shot, from room to room, from angle to angle? If that bothers you, this movie's going to literally make you sick. It's going to be way too much for you to handle. But for somebody like me, I've always kind of loved that style. And I feel like if it's used a little bit, not too much, not too heavily relied on, it is actually really interesting to see and very aesthetically pleasing to me. That's what the draw for this movie was. This movie was completely insane. It was a modern Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but with its own unique spin on it. These characters were very eclectic, very energetic. Obviously, Sherry Moon Zombie as Baby. Say what you want about Sherry at this point, but I love her as Baby in this movie. And she was smoking at this time, too. This is peak Sherry Moon Zombie. She gives a great performance, and she's just great to look at on screen. What's the problem there? You've got Bill Moseley, who is just menacing as all hell, and the imagery in this movie. When you get down into the tunnels, where the walls are literally lined with corpses, and you see, Dr. Satan performing some weird procedure on someone in a chair, while his, giant henchman that looks like something straight out of the Doom video game is coming after our lead actress. There's so much about this movie that is just whack. You do not see it in commercial films nowadays. You just don't. And I love that about this movie. I also think that this movie kind of just oozes that atmosphere, that perfect Halloween watch. It really does feel like it at a lot of points throughout this movie. I mean, it's basically a giant haunted house. It's basically a giant maze. Sid Haig in this movie, he is so energetic. He is his attitude and his personality are so infectious. You cannot help but laugh at this guy, from so many of his line deliveries to his shirts to whatever it may be. He's incredible in this movie. This movie really started what became a trilogy, but even if it had just been this, these characters would have lived with you forever. They're just so memorable. I think so much about this movie is just depraved too, with the ways that some people are killed, or the aftermath, or Little Wolf, or whatever it might be. But there's a sense of humor to it. You know, we've got Chris Hardwick's character getting murdered and tortured on a spinning wheel while Brick House is playing. And Sherry Moon's like dancing sexily. And it's just kind of like you don't know how to feel. Because you're like, oh, hey, Sherry, you look good. Oh, hey, this is kind of gross. Oh, hey, good song. And like, to balance all of those things in one scene just shows you from the very beginning, Rob Zombie had like an eye and a feel for horror that you just don't see a lot nowadays. So I think in summation with House of a Thousand Corpses, although it does heavily borrow from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in all the right ways, it also sets itself apart in a lot of ways. It has super memorable characters, memorable deaths, memorable scenes, and a few nice surprises. You know, I think still to this day, this is Rob Zombie's creepiest movie. It's a creepy movie. This is a horror movie. Even as an adult, I remember the first time I watched this movie, a specific scene where two characters are being lowered into the ground in coffins, and there is a tape recorder playing on a loop saying, "Bury me in a nameless grave," in this disembodied, just evil voice. And that stuck with me from the first time I saw this movie. It gave me goosebumps the first time I watched this movie. It is creepy. And that's just what this movie is. This movie is a grindhouse 70s style throwback in all the most disgusting and memorable ways. It pays homage to the classics that came before it that so heavily influenced it, while treading new ground and creating characters that will live on for generations. It put a director on the map that, before this movie came out, nobody probably would have ever thought of calling a director in the first place. This movie just delivers the goods. See, a lot of people prefer Devil's Rejects because it is a much more stylistic, I think, in a lot of ways. A little bit bigger budget, and it's a little less all over the place. But not me. House of a Thousand Corpses, to me, is an acid trip fever dream, absolute mindfuck that I can just get behind and love every second of this movie. So tonight I'm going to watch House of a Thousand Corpses. I'm going to keep my October watches going, and this is going to be my second watch this October. And I'm really excited to watch this movie again. But I want to hear what you guys have to think about House of a Thousand Corpses. What is your experience with this movie like? What's the history of this movie like for you? How do you feel about this movie now? And do you struggle like me with sometimes saying this might be Rob Zombie's best movie? It's this or Halloween 2. Depending on the day, sometimes I might take this. Other times I'm taking Halloween 2. So I don't know where I land with that, but I want to hear what you guys have to say down below in the comment section. Please leave a like on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'm really, really excited to be doing almost daily videos this October. I love talking to you guys, and I love putting this kind of stuff out there. So please discuss below with me. Thank you so much for watching. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I am pulling out.